welcome to a new edition of Keefer's Corner. I'm Jeremy Nygaard, joined by Coach Keefer. Coach, how are we doing today?
Hey, we're doing great.
And we are Wednesday here of a game week. We're going to play Prescott later. We went to Osceola Friday, got a win. What were your initial reactions to that game on Friday?
Well, I was pleased because anytime you go to Osceola's they're a good football team. They're really well coached. And they play hard. They play extremely hard. And we expected it to be a difficult game. You also think about coming off an emotional high. And there's always a little concern about a letdown. But our kids played pretty darn well. I think we made some steps. We're making progress. And I thought we had a fantastic week of practice last week.
The first quarter on Friday wasn't the way that you would script it, right?
Right.
We come out right away, long run. It looks like, hey, this is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Don't score on that drive. I think we missed a field goal.
Yep.
There was a blocked.
No, it was missed.
Just missed. And then the next drive, around midfield, we turn it over and give them a short field. Defense looked phenomenal overall. As far as what Osceola did against us defensively, because
Mm-hmm.
I think those that have watched a lot of our games, they've seen a lot of downfield stuff, a lot of throwing the ball. We did less of that on Friday night.
Yeah, well, what we try to do is, we look at the defense, and we do have a lot of options within our play calling, and Osceola basically said, hey, we're gonna make you run to beat us, and that's the first team that's really given us that approach. We've actually faced a lot more teams that were loading the box and forcing you to throw, but I think we have had some success on the perimeter. And it appeared that Osceola said, hey, we're going to try to shut that down. So we had a little bit lighter box, and we were able to run the ball pretty effectively.
And one of those things that we did on the ground, Mason Werner, quarterback, eclipsed 200 yards on the ground, which to my knowledge is the first time that's ever happened in school history. What do you think of Mason as a runner?
He's just a superior athlete. He has terrific vision, and he has really good patience. Like when he runs our counters, a lot of times we work with our running backs to be patient, let it happen, and he's innately just a patient kid. Seems to be good at setting up his blocks, and then obviously he can run, and he's been really consistent with the reads. Sometimes there are reads that we do where he could be handing it off or he could be running it, and it's very rare for him to miss a read. So he's been extremely consistent. He runs hard. He's fast. Just love what he's been doing there. And he's probably run the ball even a little bit more than I had hoped he would, because he just sees the field and he has a great knack for when to pull it down and go. And that is just, a lot of that is him just seeing the field and making good choices.
And when guys or teams have success on the ground, you have to attribute some of that, give some of the credit to the guys in front of them.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, our kids played well. We're getting better up front. I mean, whether we're talking about the success we've had through the pass game, that I hugely attribute to how we've protected. And I, just even this week as we're preparing for Prescott, a team that's going to be unique in some of the things they do, I just think we've had a really good week, and those kids are understanding. They're pretty consistent in their communication, and when they're cohesive, they're really tough. And it's the same thing that makes you good in pass protection, that makes you good running the ball. Is everybody on the same page. At this point in the year, you should know who to block and you should know how to block.
And it's got to make you feel pretty good as a coach when you're down a couple of guys on your line,
mm-hmm.
and you bring in other guys, and it looks just like last week.
Yeah, I really was proud of Landon Egan. I thought did a terrific job, and that's one of the things we talk about with our guys is it's a long season and guys get dinged, and there's going to be opportunities. There's going to be a kid that's just about every week that gets an opportunity to play, and then what do you do with that opportunity? I take a kid like Landon Egan. I thought he did a great job with his opportunity, and that leads to more opportunities in the future. And I also was very happy with Dylan Viendahl. Now, Dylan's played quite a lot on the O-line, so it's not like, oh, this is the first time Dylan's played. Dylan's played, maybe just less than half our offensive snaps. He's played significant snaps on offense. So he did a really nice job too. But those other guys, Noah Sarar is in the middle, and he's always, he's a student of the game, and he's a very great communicator. And Elijah Heimer is he's a super tough athletic kid, and you love the way he's a grinder. And Luke Deschaines played well, and so that's been really that's the key thing. Those guys are playing well.
Offensive player of the game, do you recall?
the offensive player of the game was Mason. With his excellent runs and great decision making. It's pretty hard not to give it to him. Although the offensive line is also recognized.
Flip it over to the defensive side. Late score for Osceola. How did you feel? I think they completed one pass.
They did, but that's a little misleading because I would say they probably dropped three or four passes. That
did-
would have been
they did-
huge.
They did drop
They
some
would have
big
been
balls.
huge, and that could have really
Yeah.
made a difference. And we've had a little, a couple of recurring things that we're really working on over there on that D side. But I did feel like we did some things that were good. Anytime you hold a team to 6 points, you're doing things right a fairly high percentage of the time. Because it's never going to be perfect, but we obviously are striving to be better and better every week. But yeah, I thought we did a good job on D. D line wise, there was, we were hoping for a little bit more consistent striking than we actually got. We had some guys that did a good job. So, we're continuing to work.
D player of the game. Do you remember who it was?
The defensive player of the game, I believe, was. Man, that was close. I know we had like 5 kids nominated, and I want to say it was, I think it was Eli. He was Eli Coonan, and he's been really prolific from a defensive end position. Right, this is however many games he played. I think he's tied for the league in tackles, and that's unheard of from a defensive lineman.
Right.
So it's great for him. And he can continue to get better too, but he's certainly been a force for us.
Special teams wasn't a huge factor in the game. I don't recall.
Yeah, Davis had another, I'd say a good night kicking. Made 3 extra points, 2 for 3 on the field goals. Missed the 1 field goal.
Right.
Evan Clausen continues to snap it very well.
Correct.
We didn't have a lot of punts,
Right.
but
One question I was going to ask you so we score late in the first half, and we get the ball back the next play. I think there was 13 seconds left, or maybe 6 seconds
yeah,
left.
it was less than 13. I think we had time for one play.
The ball on the 38.
Yeah, that's too long. Too long field goal, I thought. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I mean, did it cross your mind?
It really didn't, not in that circumstance. Okay. And
one timeout left?
Yeah.
Did you think like quick out, let's get 7 yards further down?
Well, part of it too, part of what went into it for me, it was also watching Davis kick off. Davis did not have his best day kicking off on Friday. So I didn't feel, although his kickoffs or his field goal attempts looked good, he, jumped off his leg like it did. Usually he's putting that ball in the end zone, and I think, maybe if I felt like he was really having his A game, that I might have entertained the thought, but I just kind of had the sense that, I just thought we had a better shot if we threw it up, and we actually had. It wasn't too far from shaking out the way we hoped it would.
Having that weapon, and I've said it before, having that weapon where drives don't need to end in a touchdown to be successful. That's just such a huge thing to have in your back pocket.
It's so rare for high school football, for you to be able to be super confident when you try out your kicker, and you feel very, very, optimistic that thing's going between the uprights, and it's huge. That's going to be big. There will be additional games I would predict before this thing's done, where we're going to look back on it and say, God, that's awesome.
Moving forward now, we got Prescott. Prescott started the year. And we talked about them. They were young. They looked really good, and they've struggled now recently. What's the game plan? How do you take advantage of a team when they're down a little bit?
Well, I think it's a classic example. Prescott maybe was overlooking their opponent last week in Amory, because Amory hasn't had a ton of success.
Right.
But I assure you, if you look on film, Amory has plenty of talent. Everybody should be on notice because they do have some people, and I believe it's possible that Prescott maybe just was looking ahead a little bit, maybe to maybe another game. So, yeah, Prescott they have some very good skill kids. They have a kid, which this should mean something, I would think. Their quarterback, I think his name is Teddy Burnick. Teddy has thrown for over 1,000 yards. By comparison, Mason has 855. Now, granted, they've played another game, but you get the idea. They're very effective throwing the ball. So they've been throwing the ball a lot. We're talking, I think they're averaging like 30 attempts a game, so that's a lot of throws.
So between us throwing the ball potentially 30 times, them throwing the ball 30, I probably shouldn't make plans for after the game Friday because this game might go a little longer.
It just might. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. It kind of depends. Right. We might be throwing it a lot, or we might not be throwing it that much. It just kind of depends on what we get. But I do think that they have some pieces that are impressive. They have good athleticism. They have a linebacker, number 55. He's an impressive kid. And they have a lot of good athletes. I do think that they're a young team. They do a lot of movement up front, and I believe that we can expect to see a ton of stunting and a ton of blitzing. So we've been working hard to prepare for that type of stuff. I think they're doing a nice job with them.
Looking outside of us, Prescott, Osceola last week, the middle border is becoming a conference where you think you know what's going to happen. And then you look at the scores after the game, and you're like, well, if I'm picking the games last week, I get 3 out of 4 wrong.
I would have too.
And so, looking forward, does that give teams greater focus? Does that give some teams maybe greater confidence? How does that work?
I think it does both. I agree with your analysis there. I think that everybody feels like they have a chance. When you see, some upsets happening, that gets to be contagious, and I think if you're the leader, you're looking back, it makes you understand if you don't bring it, it's the middle border.
Right.
Okay. Anybody in this league can beat you. That's a fact. If you show up thinking you got it, you're going to lose. That's anybody in this league because there are teams that are more talented. There are teams that are every year there's going to be some differences, but there are a lot of really good coaches in this league, and people take advantage of you, man. And it's if you don't come focused, you're going to come home with a loss, and it'll humble you in a hurry.
Absolutely. Monday night, Osceola comes here. JV C squad. How'd those games go?
Our C squad had a fairly rough outing. I believe they lost 20-0. I did not see a ton of the game when I got there. They were playing good D at the end, but there were some pretty disappointed kids. And the feel I kind of got just from talking with kids, they didn't feel like they played very well at all. And part of it is you have to be ready to play. Ultimately, coaches, we always try to get people fired up and ready to go, but when it comes down to it, it's up to the player. The player's got to be the guy that gets themselves ready to roll. And you can't just sit back and wait for your coach to give the greatest pregame speech of all time, because that doesn't work. It isn't sustainable. Obviously we try to get guys going, but it's not because of that. That's just maybe a little bit more lighter fluid, but you got to get the fire going, man, and the fire's on you. So I think we hopefully can learn. We talk about mental toughness. That's part of being mentally good, is learning how to concentrate and focus. Right? You have to prepare for games. Our JV started the game against Osceola, I thought, poorly. We just didn't have a lot of fire. We dug ourselves a hole. We're down 22-0. Then our kids came roaring back pretty nicely. Played a nice second half. We had it 16-22. We had the ball with a little over 4 minutes left. Inside the 50, we're going in. Let's go in and win this thing, and everybody feels great. Well, we did not convert a 4th down play, and the next play from scrimmage, Osceola took her to the house, and so the score. Actually, they scored twice. We had another one. We turned it over, an interception, and they ran it back, and so the score was more lopsided than it was. But we played a nice second half. But again, the message to both groups were, hey, we got to be ready to go. Absolutely. Just because you got to be ready. That's a lesson. Hopefully we can learn.
So to rewind just a little bit, so after we play Friday at Osceola, we come back, and I see you pulling a little double duty, coaching some flag football on Saturday.
Played a little flag football Saturday morning. That's fun. It's fun to. I was filling in. There was a coach that had a trip and needed someone to do it. I said I'd be glad to do it. So it was fun to be around those kids, and man, it's just fun. There's so many good little athletes, and they were having fun. And
did you get some RPO in?
I did in pregame. We did work a little bubble and a little slant. We did a little mesh. Showed them a couple things, so at least they could be organized. I just point at them and say, "Hey, you're the shell across here, the second shell. You're deep. Let's go."
Saturday night though, football not as great.
Whew, yeah, I don't know if I can talk about it. It's too painful. It's too soon.
Okay.
That's one of the worst losses I think Wisconsin's had, obviously, since the Big Ten championship loss under Gary Anderson. It felt terrible. So we'll see. We'll see what Wisconsin's made of. The schedule's going to get easier. But that was certainly, it sure looked like Ohio State was in another stratosphere talent-wise, and that's not what you want to see.
Right. Sunday.
Yeah, that was a great day.
Yeah,
I thought I feel really good about the Packers because I think their defense is legit. Now, I understand Tampa was very limited, with receivers being out. Godwin's out, and
Evans was out.
Yeah, Evans was out with the suspension, and they're going to be better and more difficult to defend. But I still was very impressed with the Packer D. I mean, the way they looked against Minnesota, you're like, this is gonna be tough. But it's the NFL, and things are never as bleak as they seem, nor as good as they seem.
Exactly.
So, but I do feel good about the Pack because I definitely think they're going to get things ironed out with the receivers. And they're still young guy mistakes, but that Dobbs is going to be good. I do think Watson's going to be something. So that's really good. And, and if you get games like that out of Randall Cobb, Lazard is, he's dependable. I like him in the red zone because he's so big and he's hard to stop on a slant. So good stuff.
So overall, the weekend, aside from those 3.5 hours on Saturday night.
Yeah, it was a good weekend other than those 3.5 hours on Saturday. That's true. But
anything else?
No. Well, hey, I guess I got to say hi to Will. You be a good boy. Listen to your mom and dad. And
maybe this time he won't watch it right after his nap, so the reaction video will be a little better than it was last weekend.
We'll see.
All right, this was Keefer's Corner. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you up at King Field on Friday night.